How competitive was this spring market for you?
Very.
How do you help people navigate the different styles of home, types of homes in the different neighborhoods? What do you think the most common reasons are that people decide to move to the North Shore?
I'm there.
Naturally. Okay, welcome back. I am sitting here with somebody that absolutely needs no introduction. Miss Connie Dornan, my sister of the northern suburbs. I'm younger. We're going to put that out there now. Anyways, Connie, thank you so much for coming back. You are the source of all sources for the North Shore, the surrounding suburbs. And anytime I have somebody going your direction, you're the first person I call.
And whenever someone's going in your direction, you're the first person I call. But let me tell you, you might be a slight hair younger than me. Slight hair. I am not that old.
Age is just a number.
Yeah.
Anyways, Connie and I have actually known each other for 2 decades now, I think.
Yeah.
For 2 decades, we've been doing this. I'm thrilled to have you back. We are at the tail end. We survived another spring market.
Oh, did we just? Holy cow.
Whew.
Yeah.
I feel a little crispy on the outside, but I wanted to get together. I wanted to talk about what we experienced, what we saw, how we survived, and even more importantly, where we're going next.
Well, this last spring market was... it was surreal, but it started actually with the fourth quarter of 2024. Now, usually, I think you can attest to this, the third and fourth quarters of any given year, you kind of slow down, you kind of catch up and get yourself ready for the first and second quarter of the following year. But the fourth quarter of 2024 was absolutely insane. And that carried through into the first 2 quarters of 2025, despite we're down over 10% in inventory. But the buyers really came out this year, and my God, they came out in full force.
Well, I guess that rolls us into our first question fabulously. How competitive was this spring market for you?
Very. The type of offers that people were writing were not the usual type of offers that I've seen in previous spring markets.
Okay, explain that for us.
They were waiving home inspections.
Everything.
Waiving mortgage contingency.
Giving plasma.
Yeah, they were. Putting down anywhere between 5 to 20% earnest money, coming in cash, borrowing from mom and dad to purchase the home in cash, even though they're perfectly qualified to get a mortgage just to be more competitive.
For certain. And we saw that as well in the city. Now, it's interesting. I don't know if you saw this, but in the city, what we saw was that it wasn't everything. Not everything was like that. There were definitely certain markets that were uber competitive where it felt like we were writing offers that were giving me major anxiety to write.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So certain markets were very much that way. Certain markets were competitive, but maybe not that, as we said, that plasma type competitive. Did you see that in the suburbs as well?
I did. It depends on the location within the community. It also depends on the product.
Okay. People hate when we talk about houses like they're products. We have to think about them that way, but
true.
It's true. It's very true.
It's true.
It's a home, Connie, not a product.
Yeah, I know, but we can't look at it that way, right? We're taking the emotion out of the transaction for the client to get them to the finish line.
That's a really polite way of saying sometimes we have to be heartless bitches in this world.
Yes, very good. I hope you guys got that.
Beep,
bleep. All right, go on.
Anyways, no, so that's definitely something that we saw in the city. Like, for example, we saw that our 2 and 3 bedroom condo market was on fire and fuego. It was like,
really,
it wouldn't matter what it was. You were always going to be up in certain neighborhoods against 10 other offers. Most of the home values were going 10% over the list price. We were waiving every contingency we possibly had. I mean, there were offers that kept me up at night.
So what made those neighborhoods more attractive than others?
Well, the product type, I think. The neighborhoods, yes. So the neighborhoods are the most desirable ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our what I call our blend lifestyles, our Lincoln Parks, our Lakeviews, our Ravenswoods, our Logan Squares, all of those neighborhoods that have that great combination of a little bit of a residential vibe, yet all the reasons people stay in the city.
But there's got to be like an armpit area of Lincoln Park, isn't there? Like in every community there is. So was it hot and even in the armpit areas?
The armpits were sticky as well.
Get out.
Yeah,
really?
No, for certain. And now, once again, just like you said, certain locations are going to drive a more competitive nature.
Yeah.
But it was those people that the strategy was, let's look for something that maybe isn't quite so desirable.
Right.
And yet it's a relative piece.
Right.
Now, on the other hand of the spectrum, we saw certain markets take a little bit of a breath, depending on our luxury market in certain aspects. It was still hot, don't get me wrong, but it was taking a little bit of breath in comparison to some of our other pieces.
Well, that's a little bit different out in the suburbs. So the luxury market, particularly like in Glencoe, Winnetka, Wilmette, is still doing remarkably strong. Whereas I am seeing the luxury market in Glenview, Northbrook take a breath, as you stated. However, it's still very good.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong, because there's nothing to buy. So, I mean, houses that I would have sold just 2 years ago,
Yep.
let's say for $2 million in, let's say, Northbrook, are now going for $2.5 million, completely different. And in areas that did not command those prices previously.
Sure.
So, but there's nothing to buy. People got to live somewhere.
People have to live somewhere. No, for certain. And that, I think, is a really good transition to our next question, because our next question, I think, ties a lot to this, because we've had a lot of people over the past few years pausing, waiting, overthinking, assessing. How have mortgage rates affected your market?
They haven't. People have just come to terms that this is just the way of the world right now. They're going to be this way. We're not going to have the 2% and 3% mortgages. Occasionally, and actually, I got a phone call this weekend from someone saying, well, maybe I should hold off from buying till the mortgage rates go down. I'm like, they're not. They're not going to be 2% and 3%. You got to get rid of that dream. Maybe at some point later, but it might not be in your lifetime. But because
no, that's it. It's a great point. And I say we have this fuzzy recollection of what drove the interest rates there. Our world was at complete catastrophe, which caused the interest rates. We had a deadly worldwide pandemic that was killing people, and our economy was failing. There were so many bad things happen, and that's what drove the rates there. Like, people forget about everything that led up to that. They think about the rates. Okay, so maybe a very small speculation, if we ever go through something similar to that catastrophic event, maybe we'll see it. But I don't know. I'd rather have 4%, 5%, 6% interest rates and not go through that again.
I think
Connie's going to differ with me. She's up for round 2 of COVID.
Well, that avian situation isn't looking too pretty right now. Have egg prices gone down yet?
That would be a hard no.
Yeah, that's
they're going to get tariffed next.
That's another conversation about the chickens. But so over the holidays, I went to Australia, and I visited my relatives in Australia that I hadn't met before, and some I haven't seen in over 40 years. It was an incredible trip.
How is that possible since you're 35?
Oh, yeah.
Fuzzy math. I get it.
I've never been really good at math. Anyway, long story short, I was talking to them about the type of mortgages that they have. And I also have friends and family in Canada, in Europe. And I've asked everyone, okay, what type of mortgage do you have? How is it amortized? What's your interest rate? And you know what? No one has what we have here in the U.S. And I think that's really special. 30-year amortizations where you have a fixed interest rate. So even if it's 6% or 7%, that is still obnoxiously low over the course of 30 years.
For certain. Well, and I think one of the things, and it's funny because you mentioned how it just doesn't matter. Now, in the city, we just generally have we don't have a lot of inventory, but we have a little bit more inventory. We have more buyers as well, so it's a little bit different. But we have a lot of people that are coming to us and saying, hey, I think I'm going to wait for my buying power to increase with the interest rates to go down. Now, I don't know about you. My philosophy is this. When and if those interest rates go down, and they will at some point, they're not going to go down to 2, 3, 4%, but will they get back into the 5s, low 6s? Absolutely. And when that happens, I think that there's a lot of people that are sitting on the fence post right now that are saying, that's going to be my time. And they are waiting for that. And I think when those interest rates hit those numbers, I think if we see a 5, I think that the market is going to get flooded with buyers. So my advice, pay a little bit extra right now.
And then refi.
And then refi when your home is going up, because otherwise it's going to be a lateral move. You're going to have a more expensive property with a lower interest rate, and you're paying the exact same thing, only with less equity.
Well, the thing is, we have such a low level of inventory. It's going to take a couple of years for life to happen, for people to get married, divorce, die, retire, all the major life events that cause for someone to move. And that's going to take a few years to happen, right? But in order for that market to get more balanced. So when the interest rates do go down to, let's say, 5%, and let's say that does happen in 2026, the house prices are going to go up. So I would rather secure a house price right now, refi later,
and have the same house for cheaper.
Exactly.
No, you and I see eye to eye. And I don't think there's a true real estate professional out there that doesn't see it that same way. So if you're getting the advice or you're thinking to yourself, wait for the rates to go down, that is honestly some of the poorest advice I think that you could take right now. And hopefully you're not taking any of that from what we're saying.
I hope not. I mean, can we be more clear?
Okay, let's move on from that. So interest rates are having a lesser impact, but they have the potential to have impact.
The other thing that you have to consider are people that have been on the market for a while looking for a home, right? And let's say they were on the market last year and then they waited out to this year. Now the same house that they were looking at last year is about $200,000 to $300,000 more this year, depending on the product, of course, of what they're getting. So, and then the interest rate is also inched up. So they can't afford it. You have to.
We've had, and it's hard as an advisor, right? We don't have crystal balls. We can't predict the future. We can lean in on our data. We can give good advice, but it's hard as an advisor when we have had clients. I know you have, because we have some joint clients have had buyers in this market for 3 to 5 years. Now they're patient because they are really truly finding or wanting to find that long-term house, and they don't want to make certain compromises. The hard part is that by not wanting to make compromises in the market, and life is full of compromises, people.
No, it's not. Don't compromise.
Connie's life is not full of compromises. My life is full of compromises. It's the word we use in successful relationships.
She's right. I'm only kidding.
So, but we've had clients that have literally been watching the market outperform them every step of the way. And now it's hard. Now it's hard because they've seen all that. They've tasted all that. And now they're trying to catch up so much with a market that's increased so much and an interest rate that hasn't changed enough.
I agree.
So, okay. I know we've been skirting this issue, but I want to really, really hammer in on it. How has the inventory changed in the North Shore?
It's down by at least 10% on average throughout the North Shore. So it's made things far more competitive. And when representing buyers, it's become more painful to sit there and tell your buyer, well, if you really want this house, these are your options. You have to waive your mortgage contingency. You have to do this, that, and the other, and give the rights to your firstborn child.
And your plasma.
And your
all
plasma.
of it. Take it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they'll lose the first couple of times. Then by the third time they're writing an offer on the house, they're like, okay, we're ready to give it all.
I want to totally deviate from our question here because I think it's really important. And if I was watching this podcast, this would be in the back of my head. Why would somebody want to jump into this market? And why would our advice be to write this extravagant offer, waiving contingencies, increasing risk? Why would we do that? Like, that's the question.
Because they want to buy a house. They want to live in a house. For example, a client that I was speaking to on my way over here this morning, and we're going to be listing his house in a couple of months. And he went full throttle to buy this particular house. Way above ask, waived his inspection, waived everything. And by the way, I did not advocate for him to waive his inspection. I just gave him the a la carte menu of everything that you can choose, and we talked about the pros and cons. So just want to make sure the audience knows that, and I'm very clear about that. Now, but he really wanted this house. It was in the location that he's been looking in, and he's been looking for a while. It's not like he woke up yesterday and said, I want to buy a house. He's been looking for the last 2 years, and he's very specific. He wants that walkability to downtown Glenview. He wants to be near certain parks and the school. That's where he wants to live. And he finally found a product that came up, and he's like, I am not going to lose it. I want to buy this home.
Well, and I think there's a great point. And you tend to sell homes to people for longer durations than a lot of the ones I do, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, we see that. But I think, and that's where So you often, and I have this as well, but we can advocate for the fact that somebody's willing to increase the risk and pay a premium if it is that what I call a little bit of a unicorn status. We know it doesn't come up. We know we might not see it. It is what they want, and it is a long-term investment. That's absolutely a point in which I would say I would overpay. I did it on my house, which I've been in 19 years.
Are you really overpaying, though? I have a problem with that term.
Okay.
You're not overpaying. That is what the market is dictating the value of that home is. If you're willing and able to purchase a home for X, that is what the market value is. That is not an overpayment.
No, but you're paying an absolute premium.
You might be, when you're taking a look at the comps, yes, it will be a premium.
Yes.
But does it really matter over the course of your home ownership? If
then that's where I'm
trajectory
saying
is 7 to 10 plus years, who gives
for
a
you
fuss?
that might not matter. In my market, the question would come if somebody's only going to own something for 3 to 5.
That's different.
Could that be a different conversation? And the answer is absolutely yes. And this is things that we talk about. Now, there are times, though, that we have to look at the big picture of the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, I have clients that come to me that are in either a lease or they had to sell to buy or whatever the case may be, in which we have a timeline. Now, I am the first person to always say, you never, ever, 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 ever buy a house. Did I say never, ever? Because of a timeline. Ever. Because that's not the reason to do it. But does it make sense in those situations? If you have a timeline that if you cannot hit is going to cost you a lot of money, does it make sense to pay a premium and roll that into a 30-year mortgage? I say yes, because if you're going to move into temp housing, put your stuff into storage, and have all of those costs, that is easily going to cost you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
Absolutely.
So do you want to just
1,000%
flush that down the toilet, or do you want to roll that into, and that's liquid. That's liquid
I
fund.
have the same conversations with my clients on that.
So and I just wanted to hit on that point because I know there's the naysayers out there that go, oh, they're just telling them to write big offers. No, we look at every situation. We figure out what makes most sense for our clients. And we go, I've got plenty of people that I talked to in the beginning of this year, and I said, sit tight, call me in August. In August, we'll buy a house.
There's no one size fits all. Every single transaction is a snowflake, and every single client is a snowflake. It's, well, maybe not a snowflake, but you know what I'm saying. Very unique situation.
I'm melting.
But, you know, we're talking a lot about the buyers on the seller side and listing a property in the type of market that we're in right now. In my opinion, I think you would be doing yourself a disservice to overprice your property.
100%.
So say that your property is worth $1 million, and we feel very confident that you are going to achieve $1 million. And if the comps suggest it's $1 million, more than likely you will still have a multiple offer situation on your hands, and the price will go up from there because there's not that many $1 million homes out there. Right? So, but if you're like, well, if we think that that multiple offer situation is going to yield me 1.1 or 1.2, let's just price at 1.2 because maybe I'll get 1.5.
Nope.
That is such a bad idea because the consumer is not stupid. You know, they know what's going on and they're like, yeah, I like the house, but that's just crazy.
It's a market that I've said this, I've used this term for 5 years now, and it's getting a little bit repetitive. It's next to impossible to underprice a good product, but it is incredibly easy to overprice it.
Absolutely.
So, and it's true. We sit down with our clients, both buyers and sellers, and say, here's what the fair market value is based on the comparable properties that we've looked at. In this particular market, everything will sell at the high end or above the high end, depending on that. So,
correct. Absolutely.
Okay. So this is going to transition into a little bit of a different question with that. And I think we've kind of skirted this issue as well. But with all this competition, with all this lack of inventory, what is happening to prices in your world?
They're up. They're up everywhere. Everything is up. Here's a good example. In Northbrook, this one particular area of Northbrook within District 27, land cost, pre-pandemic, I was selling it anywhere between $250 and $350, depending on the lot size. That same product, now that same land, is going anywhere between $550 and $750.
I grew up in Northbrook. For those of you that don't know that about me, I grew up at 1940 Clover Road.
Oh, I know exactly where that is.
Have you been in that house ever?
Probably not.
It had a pool in it. I loved the pool. My dad hated the pool, but I remember. In fact, on the old Northbrook memories, I've got my 30th anniversary, 30th reunion. Sorry, reunion sounds better than anniversary. For my graduation of Glenbrook North. I am a Glenbrook North product. So
no wonder
says a lot about me.
Talented and smart. Look at you.
It's that North Shore education system. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it as well, but it does go back to the fact that we talk about the huge seasonality in our market, where the market has been competitive all year round. It is uber competitive for us in the spring, and we'll see it a little less competitive as we start to navigate into the second half of the year.
Well, let's go back. So you grew up on Clover. So I know that neighborhood. I sold a house just 2 blocks away from there. Split level, updated nicely, sold close to $1 million. Crazy. That same product just 2 years ago or 3 years ago would not have sold for a dime more than $775. That's how much it's gone up.
Connie's saying I was raised on the bad side of the tracks.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that Clover doesn't have the walkability, for example, as a street on, let's say, Ash or Cedar in downtown Glenview or downtown Northbrook or Walnut.
Absolutely. No, I get it for certain. My parents kind of like that. There was less places for us to get into trouble.
But you get more, house for your money.
More bang for your buck.
Yeah, you put that same product over on Clover or Smith or any of those streets and you pop them over on Walnut or Butternut in downtown Northbrook, it's a lot more. So
for certain.
What's important to you? Do you want the walkability or do you want more of a suburban lifestyle?
Okay, so and this is just a little bit of a curiosity. Now that we are slowly getting a few of these sellers to put their houses on the market, where are you seeing that your sellers are moving to? Are they staying within the area and then upgrading or downgrading? Are they going to the city? Are they going out of state? Where are your sellers going?
This year is very interesting.
That is the understatement of all understatements for all things in the world.
So, yeah. So I have some sellers that are moving out of state. They're retiring, going Florida. Most of them Florida, actually. Arizona, warmer climates. And then,
I'm going to keep all my Florida comments to myself.
Yeah. And then I have a few clients this year, more so than in previous years, that are selling their homes because they see where the market is going, that they're getting a lot more money for their home in this particular market. So they just want to cash in on it. And they're buying something far less expensive or moving in with relatives just to save up the money. And they're hoping for a crash. I can't see a crash in the real estate market. I might see crashes in other things, but a lot of those people are also...
My portfolio.
Yeah, your portfolio. Some of those people are also worried about the future of their own businesses. Sure. So they're taking a more conservative approach right now. Not too different than Warren Buffett, sitting on cash.
Well, I think, we don't get too much into the political elements.
No.
But obviously there's been a lot going on in this world and kind of how it impacts our world. There's been a lot of question marks, concerns. I've noticed in my clients' behaviors is that we've seen a lot of people pumping the brakes or pausing or what is happening in their industries, what's happening in their portfolios. Is a recession coming? Like there's just a lot of things going on in the world that have people concerned.
It's the lack of consumer confidence, right? Sure. That's gone down. Fear and anxiety, they're watching their portfolios, it's dwindling. But all these things are cyclical. You have your ups and you have your downs. I don't think it's any cause to panic or have anxiety. Although, if you speak to Mr. Dornan, that might be a very different situation. The
thing to note, right?
I think with age, I'm panicking less. No.
What do you mean, Connie? No, I'm just kidding. No, I think one of the important, and this isn't even in our questions, but an important thing to note, recessions, economic recessions, right? The thing to note for us is because obviously we have a lot of people going right now, are we on the cusp of a recession? Are we in a recession? What is going on in our economy? God only knows. But the reality is that the correlation between residential home values and economic recessions is actually a very positive one. We have tracked recessions back into the 80s. There have been 12 recessions that we have tracked the data on. In 10 of those economic recessions, The country as a whole performed well. We saw an increase in home values. One of them, we saw that it was fairly flat, maybe down just a little bit of a hair. The only time we actually saw home values go down during a correlation with an economic recession was during the housing crisis, which the housing crisis was such a different recession.
But it wasn't a housing crisis. It was a mortgage crisis.
It was a mortgage crisis. We saw
very different thing.
Totally.
And
one led into the next.
Right. But that was because of the mortgage crisis.
That is not a normal recession by any means.
No, not at all. That was totally a one-off kind of thing. Hasn't impacted us. And usually, like you said, with recessions, you don't really see the impact on the housing. But what we have right now with housing is totally different in any of these other 12 recessions that you're talking about, because we have house inflation here.
Right.
So there's no inventory. So it can't go down if demand is going to be there and there's no supply. Well, logic dictates.
I always say the best part about the housing crisis, as people that lived it, sweated it, had huge anxiety in it.
Yeah.
The best thing about it is that it left us a complete data playbook of what went wrong and what the data looked like. And if you compare where we're at today in terms of subprime lending, equity, foreclosures, home values, inventory, if you check every checkbox, we are a vision of stability right now.
I think because of our experience during the mortgage crisis, because I refuse to call it the housing crisis, because that's not what it was.
I'm going to go with that. I can buy into that. I can sip that Kool-Aid.
I think it made us stronger brokers in order to advise our clients. It made us more aware of the different types of location values within communities and the different type of products that we saw that went very quickly during the mortgage crisis versus the ones that lingered.
Yeah.
And having that knowledge helped us later on down the line. And I think it's helping us right now with what we're going through.
Well, it's funny. I found myself about 5 years ago telling people a little bit something about me that I hadn't told them before.
You like horses?
We're going to get real personal here. No, my introduction to real estate.
Yeah.
Right? I started right after September 11th. That was my introduction to real estate. I knew no different at the time. But
I didn't know that.
I truly, honestly believe starting at a time of crisis has so shaped, just like you were saying here, how working through that, starting at a time of crisis and then weathering different crises throughout the career has honestly shaped how I tend to work with my clients, which I know is very similar to you, which is why we mesh so well. And I always tell people, I promise I'm not constantly in crisis mode, but we lean in on the data and we lean in on the strategy, the advice, and the counsel. Those are the things. We may not know what's happening next, but we know enough to know how to navigate what happens next.
Well, you started then. I started in 2005 and I got my license. And I think it was just like a few months after that, Chicago Tribune headlines, "It's a buyer's market." And I'm like, oh my God. And I had just landed my first listing. And of course, that very first listing had radon, had water, had mold, had asbestos. My very first listing. Oh, that was something.
Whew, we got a little heavy there. Let's lighten up for a minute.
I
want to talk a little bit more about the communities, right? We have a lot of people that are considering a move to the North Shore. And I'd love to give them a little bit of insight on the things that they should be thinking about, those types of things. So first and foremost, what do you think the most common reasons are that people decide to move to the North Shore?
I'm there.
Naturally, but outside of the fact that
they're
Connie's
escaping
there.
Brandon Johnson. So, I mean, come on. All right. Well, we all know that guy's got something going on.
He's got an agenda.
I don't know what that agenda is. But anywho, the reasons why the people move to the North Shore, other than c'est moi, well, first and foremost, schools. They want more space. That's the first thing I hear from people. Okay, we live in Bucktown. We want to move out to the suburbs. We need more space. We're like in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. We can't take it anymore. And they walk into a house in the suburbs and they're like, oh, look at all this storage. Look at all the closet space. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you're going to grow out of this in about 6 months once that baby pops out. So this house is going to be too small for your needs. And these are the reasons why. Let's go see this other one if there's another one to see that day, by the way.
It's got sold 10 minutes ago. Your appointment got canceled.
I know. That's what happened to me yesterday. I had 3 houses lined up, 2 went under contract.
Better than 3 going under contract.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, but so that's part of, they see like, oh, she's right. I will grow out of that because of XYZ or yeah.
Okay, I'm going to challenge your thought process here, and I'm going to say something that is probably going to get me in a lot of trouble with a lot of people. But I have a theory. A lot of people move to the suburbs because they can't acquire that in the city, in a neighborhood that they'd like to, for a price point that feels reasonable.
I disagree. And I'm being completely honest. I'm not trying to sell the suburbs. I mean, live by whatever you want, man. I want you to be happy. I see people moving to the suburbs because they legitimately want to have more space. They want a big backyard. They want a walkability to, a little town area. They want their kids to walk and ride their bikes to school. They're looking for a bigger home.
Here comes my point.
And they like the suburban lifestyle.
My point is, if they could buy the 5,000 square foot new construction single family home with a side lot that is 3 blocks from the school that they wanted to be in, would they go to the suburbs?
Probably. I mean, you can buy that for about $2.5 million in the suburbs. How much does that sell for in the city?
More than $2.5 million.
Well, depending on the location. Are we talking about comparable locations? Are we talking like Winnetka to, what is it in the city? Gold Coast?
Lincoln Park.
Okay, Lincoln Park.
You're not going to get it for $2.5 million. Land value is well over $1 million.
You're not going to get anything for $2.5 million. It'll have been built in 1930s.
Yeah.
So you want,
but I'm just saying,
with the side lot in Winnetka, you're looking at $4 million plus, right? So pretty comparable in the city. Plus, you got the best schools.
I think we struck a nerve.
Well, I mean, come on. Yeah,
I love it.
You can't tell me that you can get the same size home with the same type of amenities and resources in the suburbs as you can in the city. You just can't.
No, they don't exist.
They don't.
But I'm just saying, the question is that I have a lot of clients that if they could afford that single family home with a large enough yard in the location that they would, they feel like sometimes the suburbs give them more opportunities for that.
Yeah, and they don't have to pay a private tuition to send their kid to a comparable school like you would in the suburbs.
That's going to strike a nerve with me. I'm a CPS mom.
No, I don't care.
No, but I'm saying it's a good thought process.
Kid. Hey.
So here's my question to you.
My son's graduating next week from a good school. I'm so excited. And he went to GBS.
My kid goes to a...
Oh, stop. Education comes from the home.
Education comes from his home.
Doesn't matter where
so here's what I'm getting at, right? I like this banter, but here's what I'm getting at. What things outside of the size and the space, why else would somebody come to the North Shore? Tell me about that suburban lifestyle. Why would somebody want to be there?
Well, all right. Talking to someone, I lived in Bucktown. Mm-hmm. I lived in Ukrainian Village before I moved out to the suburbs. I really didn't want to, but it was just more of a convenience factor. My parents lived there. I needed help with the kids. It was just more convenient to get to the grocery store, to just the daily activities of life was just easier. I didn't have to fight traffic. I didn't have to fight to get parking. I came here into the city to see you, and I came 35 minutes early just to make sure I got a parking space.
See, we'll agree on this 100%. It is easier in the suburbs.
And you can do U-turns in the suburbs. You can't do U-turns in the city. I learned that the hard way.
No, you got caught doing a U-turn in the city. You make it a 3-point turn and you can do it in any area.
Oh.
But no, it's true. And I think that hits on a very, very true point is that I always kind of joke and say is that you breathe a little bit differently in the suburbs, right? It's a little less congested. Things are just easier. I kind of joke and say in the city, it doesn't matter where you're going. If you're going 3 blocks or 3 miles, it's going to take you at least 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I come into the city, I have to be prepared. I got to leave early. And I leave early just for the parking space.
I will agree with that there are easier aspects in there.
Now, if I had a driver driving me around the city, I'd be fine. If I didn't have to pay a private school tuition to get the comparable type of schools, I'd be fine.
Yeah. But I do think there is a food for thought on the fact that it's supply and demand. There is more inventory, even though we've just spent the last 20 minutes talking about no inventory. There is more inventory at a more affordable level for more people to get more space and more, we're talking about kind of the ultra premium, but the reality is that most people say, hey, I can have a little bit more ease. I can have access to my family. I can have these things at an easier level, and it feels more obtainable as well.
Just to answer one more thing about your previous question, grocery stores. Now, I don't know how you shop with your groceries, but this is how we shop. I've got to go to Fresh Farms to get the ethnic stuff. I go to Heinen's for, certain farm, from local farm producers. Whole Foods for this, Trader Joe's for that. We go to different grocery stores. Doing that in the city, that's impossible.
I don't think I've been in a grocery store in 6 months.
Well, you're talking to a Greek who likes to cook.
Yes, I agree with you in the sense that there's different places that we do different things. Like, for example, there is Agora Market, which is in Bucktown. It's absolutely one of my favorites.
That's a Greek word.
It's local owned. The community loves it. Their produce, their meats, everything is fantastic. It's one of those things that we like to support the businesses within the community for certain.
Agreed.
Everybody else sends their stuff to our front door. Or drops it off.
Premium for that. Sometimes it's nice to go to the grocery store and you examine the apples, versus somebody drops it off on your front door.
I like to eat, not produce or acquire.
All right.
Okay. Anyways, we've been talking a little bit about the schools. This might get contentious again because I have some very strong thoughts on schools. But what do you think? And I get every school has a little bit of a different flavor and a different specialty. But what would you say are the most popular? Not your thought process, but what are the most popular schools that when people come to you, they say, I want my kids to go to this. What do you think that is? And then what do you think is important for people to know about, in general, the schools in the North Shore?
First and foremost, education comes from the home. If you beat your children enough, they'll do just fine. Teasing.
Corporal punishment is a thing.
No, but seriously, education does come from the home. And if the parents are supporting the education, the child will thrive. To answer your question, the most common thing, I want New Trier. Mm-hmm. Not everybody can afford to live in the New Trier school district. Sure. So if you're looking at all the collar areas, Glenbrook South, Glenbrook North, by the way, GBS, GBN,
Glenbrook North,
New Trier, all three of these schools have been for, I think it was on Business Insider, in the top 25 in the United States.
Yes.
So these are excellent schools. Now, let's say you can't afford GBS, GBN, New Trier. Well, some of the other collar areas are very good as well. Deerfield, Highland Park, Lake Forest, Libertyville, Prospect, Hersey. These are all, Maine South. These are fantastic schools. Niles North.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely, is that you have
you
such
really
a plethora.
can't go wrong.
Yeah. No.
Evanston Township, it's a great school.
And I always think that's one of the things. There's kind of two major differences in my mind between the city and the suburbs when it comes to education on a public level. Let's start with that. Is that, when people say to me, what neighborhoods do you think are best in the suburbs? Is that for the most part, it's harder to go wrong with a school than it is to go right with a school. Where in the city, that's going to be a little different, is that we do have some great public schools, but it's not just a blanket statement from that perspective.
Right.
Now, we have one of the things that I really enjoy about the city, we have the lottery system so that you can go to any neighborhood school out there.
Oh, really?
If you lottery in.
Oh, wow.
So for me, the big thing, and this is what, growing up in the suburbs, you moved into a neighborhood, you went to that elementary school, you went to that middle school, you went to that junior high, and you went to that high school. There was never a thought about it. There was never a question. If you weren't doing well, maybe you got a tutor, but there never was, is there a different program that might be better for you? That really isn't a huge conversation there. Versus in the city, because certain of our schools have different strengths and weaknesses and sizes and programs, if somebody goes to a school and it's really not a good fit, that family could lottery into the school one neighborhood over. Or two neighborhoods over.
But how about if they don't get into it?
Well, that's part of the challenge. That's what people are so scared about, is whether or not they're able to get into the schools that they want to or not.
Right.
But I have had clients that have moved into the best neighborhoods with the best schools, and that is the only school they wanted to consider, only to get into it 2 years in. They say, I don't know if this is quite the right program for my child.
Right.
We're actually going to lottery into another school.
Yeah. You see, in the suburbs, the advantage is that, for example, my children went to GBS. And both of my sons are remarkably different. One is special needs, the other one is very gifted. So they have programs. So if perhaps your child was not a good fit for that one particular school, they have options within the school of different programs without having to move your neighborhood.
Well, I'm saying when you move to a different school, you don't move your neighborhood. You move to a different school.
Yeah, but that's based on a lottery.
That's based on a lottery.
Oy.
But the lottery, that goes back to the easy. Is it as easy as moving to the suburbs and staying in one school and hoping that it works?
No.
Obviously not. But there are options. And I think I like the fact that if something, and you know what we see, it's not that there's not programs, but some schools are smaller, have less resources.
Yeah.
Some schools are bigger, have more parent involvement and all those different things. And so for me, that's always one of the things is that I think so many people move to the suburbs for the schools, but I think it's because they're intimidated by the school districts in Chicago.
Well, the school districts in the suburbs, specifically for the elementary, when you're looking at, they're all very good schools. And as brokers, or at least for myself, when I'm discussing elementary schools with my clients, it's not about, oh yeah, this is a better one and this one is terrible. It's really to determine location value.
What works for you.
And well, what works for them, but also there is a difference in pricing if you purchase in District 28 versus District 31. There is a difference in pricing whether or not you're in the Walden School District or Wilmette School District in Deerfield.
Sure.
So you can't buy
affordability.
Affordability.
Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the education system is different.
Precisely.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some more fun stuff, right?
Okay.
Our favorite season is here. If somebody wants to get a real good sense of the North Shore, what should they be coming and doing? How can they have fun in the North Shore during the summer?
So my personal 3 favorites, first and foremost, Ravinia. Hands down, Ravinia is the best. That's in Highland Park. Second, Winnetka Music Festival. I think this year the Revivalists are playing.
Ooh.
Yeah, big band.
Big band.
And Cracker.
Take me back to the 90s.
I know. And then in Glenview, Summerfest.
Summerfest, those are great things. No, I mean, Ravinia, right? I grew up there. We've spent many evenings at Ravinia. I think the great thing to note for us city dwellers, you can take the Metro. You can go all the way out there. It drops you off right there.
Right in front of the party.
You can take your cooler. You can take your icy beverages. You can take everything. You get dropped off. You have a fantastic evening, and you take the train back. Do not miss the last train, though. Otherwise, the Uber can be a little expensive. But it's a great evening. They're a concert venue. They have everything from classical music to, I don't even know who's headlining this year. There's got to be some good stuff.
There's been like Debbie Harry's been there, Roxy Music. I mean, they have like a wide variety of different type of musicians.
Absolutely. One of my clients has actually been the head of grounds there for the last 25 years.
Okay, I need to be friends with him.
Absolutely. He helps me out. Jim, you're the bomb. He helps me out with parking when I go there.
Fabulous.
If I'm not taking the train. And the other thing to note, and I'd say that this is the big change, is that now you don't even have to take the picnic. Like, it is so easy to go there. The food is there. The ice cream is there.
It's very good.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite summer activity in the city?
My favorite summer activity in the city? All of the above. No, for me, it's anything that's outside. Our farmers markets are to die for. Logan Square, which is just around the corner from us, is one of the best in the city, if not the country. Lincoln Park has a great one as well. So farmer markets are great.
In the country, I need to go to that.
It's phenomenal.
Okay.
I think that just the access to Lincoln Park Zoo, right? It is a free zoo. When I was first in the city and I was living not too far from there, I didn't know what to do at night. I would literally go get takeout food and I would go sit on a park bench in the zoo and eat my dinner surrounded by the wildlife. Like, for me, that's a totally underutilized asset in the city. The lakefront is amazing. Sitting on a patio. I mean, anything that I can do to be outside in the city is phenomenal. And that's not even coming into the fact that we have, just like you were talking about the music festivals, every weekend there is at least 2 to 3 festivals in one of our neighborhoods where there is bands and food and fun. Like, I will say, I'm going to go on record, there's no city in the United States that I would rather be in during the summer than Chicago. Bold statement.
Okay.
That's a mic drop moment.
Well, I have very specific thoughts on that.
So since our rivalry is thriving today, right? We're at it today. City versus suburb. No,
She's
I love
had a lot of coffee.
Not much yet. No, here's a great topic, right? One of the things that I think is such an attribute of city living is the food. You have a great palate. You are a foodie. Tell me about food in the North Shore, because my memories of it are not as good as they used to be.
It's changing. A lot of new restaurants are coming. But of course, my personal favorite is Ema. Love Ema.
Where is Ema, and what do they serve?
Glenview.
Okay.
Mediterranean.
Okay.
The chef
It's making
there,
sense. Close to home. Mediterranean. I'm sensing something.
The chef is amazing. I love him. And then there's also in Winnetka. I'm a Francophile. Love French food. Pomeroy, one of my favorite places. French 75, fantastic cocktail. I those are my two.
What about like the dive bar type that has fantastic food? Anything like that?
Look like that? So
do I? Because that's where I love to eat. So one of my favorite things growing up, and I don't even know if it's still there, was Sarkis Cafe.
Oh, well, that's not a dive bar.
You know what I'm saying, though. But like
Sarkis, I mean, that's like the best place to go for breakfast.
A ham and cheese Loretta.
Yeah.
I lived on those in high school.
I mean, is it still there? It's still there. They still do an outrageous
I haven't been
job.
in a while.
It's fantastic. If you like, I like Mediterranean food.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this other Armenian grill, Sunik. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. They do, and it's such an inexpensive lunch special. I think it's like under $10, and you could have it over a course of 2 days. It's so much food.
So I remember when we were celebrating something big when I was growing up in the North Shore, it was always Bob Chin's. Like Bob Chin's was where we went for the Mai Tais. I wasn't drinking the Mai Tais, of course. My family was. And those greasy buns, the butter buns or whatever they are.
What are you going to tell me about next? Those fried curds in Wisconsin? You like those too?
I don't, but my in-laws live in Wisconsin. So there has definitely been some cheese curd consumption in my day.
Yeah, I avoid that.
But think about it, like the food, and that's kind of what my point is that the food scene has definitely started to evolve more.
There's
in the North
a lot,
Shore.
Many more restaurants are coming in because we have been so dry on restaurants. Yeah. And I'm really excited about it. A lot of them haven't opened, but there's like a Japanese steakhouse opening up. A brewery is opening up. I'm really excited.
That's super. That's great things. Okay, so here's an interesting conversation that I have a lot of times with my clients. What type of housing do you see in the North Shore, and how should people really think about that? And let me explain that, because I know it's kind of a confusing question. I have clients that come to me all the time and they'll say, oh my God, I love Bucktown. I love everything about Bucktown. I want to live in Bucktown, but I want to live in a high rise. Well, the two don't exist, right? Because of the zoning, because of that. Or I have somebody that says, oh my God, I want a new construction house, but then they want to live in a neighborhood that is all 100-plus-year-old homes. How do you help people navigate the different styles of home, types of homes, condos versus townhouses versus single families in the different neighborhoods?
Well, we go through a list of questions, right? When they come to me and they're like, these are the things that are important to us. We want to have a house with a pool. Well, it's not going to be in a very walkable...
My dad would disagree with it.
Well, it's not going to be in a location where it's walkable because the lot sizes aren't that big to put a pool in. Maybe if you get lucky and you've got a double lot, but those are kind of rare. So that's going to push you further west in any of the given suburbs. So now we have to tailor down, okay, so you want a pool, that means a larger lot. So that means these particular locations, and this is the type of inventory that exists in these locations. And then we kind of narrow it down. And sometimes you're thinking, okay, I really want to be in Wilmette. Well, Wilmette might not be the right fit for them for the type of home they want and for the price that they want. We may get pushed into Glenview, Northbrook. And many times they get pushed out of the North Shore. And now we have to take a look at some other collar areas. And maybe that's Arlington Heights. Maybe that's Libertyville. Maybe that's Long Grove. That'll offer more bang for your buck.
Did you say collar neighborhoods?
Collar areas.
Collar. I say on the fringe.
On the fringe. Okay.
So I like that.
Well, it's not fringe though, because I mean, for example, like Northfield would be on the fringe of Winnetka, right? So Arlington Heights wouldn't be a fringe, or Libertyville or Long Grove. It's more of a collar area.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. No, and I think that that's really an important part. It doesn't matter if you're in the city or if you're in the suburbs, is that figuring out what is most important. I mean, in the city, we see a lot more above ground pools than not. I don't know if you guys see too many of those. That was a big COVID push. Ours was inflatable, in fact, and our kids loved every minute of it.
That's all that matters.
But no, I think that that's the important thing to note. And we talk so much about is that there are so many different options, cities, suburbs, depending on what's important to you, depending on what you're looking to accomplish, and depending on what the price point is. Like it all comes back
if
to
you want
those things.
2 acres, 5,000 plus square feet, and you want all brick house, well, that's Long Grove, right? And for under $2 million.
I keep telling Connie when she finds me 40 acres in the North Shore, then I'm totally in. Until then, I'm a city girl.
Okay.
City or country.
Yeah, you're sitting in the city.
I go to the country. I just drive 2 hours for it. So, anyways, Connie, you are a gem of a person. I am so grateful for you. I am in awe of you. I adore having our relationship, and I thank you so much for sharing your absolute brilliance with our guests.
Amanda, I always love being here. I always love teasing you, and I love it that you take it like a champ.
Until next time, Chicago.
Thank you for coming.